Welcome to Bartender at Large. I'm your host, Eric Castro. Today we're coming to you from Lost Lake in Chicago, and as usual, we're joined by some of the biggest names in the industry. With me today, Paul McGee, owner and proprietor of Lost Lake, and also of Banana Daiquiri LLC.
Correct.
Brother, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much.
Cool. I know you're a busy guy and involved in a lot of different projects, so I appreciate you carving out a little time
Of course.
to hang out with us.
We're happy to have you here.
Yeah. All right, man, I'm gonna jump right into it, because we've actually had you on in the past where we talked about, Lost Lake, what it's like running a tiki bar.
Sure.
An award-winning James Beard nominated tiki bar as well, might I ask.
Thank you.
Or ad. But now we're going to talk about something different. We're going to talk about some of the other projects you work in.
Okay.
And one of these projects is at a local hotel.
Sure.
The Chicago Athletic Association.
Yeah.
Yes, and one of the programs that you run there is called the Milk Room.
Yes.
And I had the opportunity of going in there. And
Yeah.
for those of you guys that have never had the chance to go in there, it's amazing. It's this beautiful, really old school looking bar. Kind of, I want to say it's like has like a nouveau speakeasy thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one thing that sets it aside from any other project I've ever seen, and that's that the entire cocktail menu is built around extinct spirits, essentially,
Totally.
like vintage and old school spirits. So it's like you go in there and you might order Mai Tai, but it's made with Appleton from like the 1950s.
Right.
And anyway, man, I could go on and talk about it forever, but people are tuned in to listen to what you got to say. So when you're doing a project like that, actually, we'll pull back even further. Where do you even get the idea for something like that?
Well, I think they had the space. It's an unusual space that they wanted to use. It was previously when it was a private club. So the Chicago Athletic Association Hotel was a private club from 1893 until 2007. Mm-hmm. And so they had odd spaces here and there, and this one was actually a service bar back in the day for the main dining room, which happens to be the lobby now.
Because it is very compact.
It's super small, yeah. And so they had this space, and they were like, we don't really know quite what to do with it. We want to make it a bar, but yeah, I mean,
and it's a crazy idea. So you're like, okay, it's small. You guys want to go big? I got just the idea.
It's small and it works. And the cool thing about Milk Room is it's in a historic building from 1893. So a lot of this stuff makes sense, where it's like you're not trying to do it in a brand new space where you're bringing in vintage spirits and things like that. So it really seemed to fit. So we were like, let's give it a shot. And that was kind of one of the challenges was, how busy are we going to be and how far ahead of this do I need to get? Because I remember we opened with like one bottle of like Campari from 1958. And we opened the bottle and we're like, oh my God, this is incredible. It's so different. And
you're like, we're gonna blow through this weekend. Where do I get more?
I didn't know. I didn't know how many we were gonna have. I mean, we do take reservations and everything like that, but we didn't know if people were gonna be into it or they're gonna ask for, dealer's choice cocktails like you did if you go to like Attaboy or something like that, which does happen a little bit, and that's where you kind of have to steer them a little bit.
Oh, so how did the clientele off the bat dig it? Because when you first opened, were all the drinks made with vintage spirits, or was it a mix?
Yeah, they were. I mean, we did one daiquiri that was like $18 to start on that menu, and it wasn't made with a vintage spirit. And so we had a daiquiri on the menu for $18 just to kind of like give it a nice entry point. And it was made with like Nissan L'Esprit, which is, again, it's a current bottling, but it's a little bit rare and special. But again, I didn't know what people were gonna drink. And you did have people like, I want something with blueberry and mezcal, and you're like, well, I mean, we can do that, but what we specialize in are these other styles of drinks. But so the first week we open, I blow through that 1958 Campari, and I call one of my suppliers. And I'm like, hey, I need another bottle of that stuff. And he was like, well, I'm sure you do. It would be really nice if I had more of those bottles lying around right now, but you got to give me some more time.
Okay, so now I'm looking at, almost more from from operations aspect, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
right.
okay, I'm gonna open this bar. I'm gonna have a whole bunch of products that are no longer available.
Right.
Which is like, I hate ordering
crazy.
from a distributor if they can't even guarantee me like the allocations for my menu, right? So it's like, how much of that, how often do you have to reprint menus, and then how much of this is also based on availability, where you're like, you're actually hoping a drink doesn't sell sometimes, right?
Right, totally.
Because you don't want to run out of it.
So what I do in that aspect is that this is the really unique aspect about the program, is that you don't have any parameters as far as like price point goes. You're not working backwards where you're like, cool, I have to charge $13 or $12 for this cocktail. What can I afford to use in order for it to make sense cost-wise? This way, I'm just like, oh, I've got something really rare. This can be a $150 drink or a $200 drink. And originally, I wanted to have as the bottle gets lower, the prices go up a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
But logistically, it's pretty much of a nightmare just trying to keep up with that.
Yeah, you'd essentially just have to do inventory every day and then reprint up menus. It'd be ridiculous.
Right.
So did you ever, have you had any experience with putting a cocktail on a menu that you're like, okay, this isn't going to sell, nobody wants this, like,
right.
you know, and all of a sudden it just was super popular to the point where like, okay, this has to stop selling so much.
You know, yeah, that definitely has happened. And at the same time, we have one that's on the current menu, and it's a Blue Blazer. And I thought this drink was gonna crush, because it's like, we're using this really awesome scotch.
From what year?
Actually, it's not vintage, but it's a Cadenhead's bottling. So it's a private bottling of Highland Park, 28-year, delicious stuff.
Wow.
Crazy, the cast strength, you know, single barrel.
I'm sure it's a pretty cheap bottle cost on that.
Right. Yeah, it's like a $400 bottle, you know. So I was like, let's do Blue Blazers with it, and we'll do like a little bit of this really cool sugar, and we'll light it on fire. And the room, once you go into the room, you'll see how small it really is. That's the other unique thing about it, is that it truly is an 8-seat room. There's no real standing room either. So you're gonna have everybody's attention. It's dark. And we sell like maybe 6 a week, and it's not even that expensive. It's like a $50 drink, but it's like, I thought it was really going to blow up, but it really did.
Right.
But on the flip side, there were some. I'm trying to think of one of the drinks we had. Besides,
but sometimes I think you don't even want it to sell that fast.
I know.
Because you could always just plug that as a Rob Roy or something, and it'll just move. It'll fly.
For sure.
So it's like it allows you to pace your product.
Right.
Because it's not like you can that private barrels and these private allocations are like that easy to get.
I mean, the first drink that I did that was a really expensive one was, I was lucky enough to pick up a haul of 6 bottles of Old Grandad from 1966, and they were all bottled in bond. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make like $150 Toronto cocktail with it. So I was gonna do bourbon and a little bit of Demerara sugar, and then 1970s Fernet. And it sold pretty well too. I was kind of surprised by that. But again, I wanted to blow through some of that product and see if people were used to spending $150 for a cocktail. And they kind of do.
And it's crazy. Okay, so I'm thinking like, because I've been to your bar, I've been to Lost Lake on a Saturday night. And, and I got to tell you, like, the place is crazy. You know, it's high volume in like its best form. It's like there's tons of people just going around having fun,
right?
You know, throwing back, banana daiquiris, and it's a very vibrant atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then I'm contrasting that to the milk room, where it's like, how's that atmosphere? Is it people throwing back cocktails, or is it because they're reservation only? So it's like, I'm guessing people probably go and have a cocktail or two, and at that price point, it could work.
Yeah. So you get a 2-hour block. So it's very much. We kind of have to dictate when your time is wrapping, and we kind of give you some visual cues of we give you kind of like a last call.
Yeah.
And we're like, you have 30 minutes left. Can I get you anything else before you move on? Or pardon me. And so, yeah, I mean, it is a curated experience. It's also a lot of couples who are not really interacting with anybody at the bar. So it just happens to be like there's 6 more people at the bar, but they're just coupled up. And they typically are drinking cocktails. Every once in a while, people will know what the back bar is, and they'll say, oh God, I didn't know you had that Overholt from 1909 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, give me a pour of that. And
so, kind of to build off of that, is it strange for you to see like, a 2-top or 2 people come sit down at the bar for like 2 hours, and then you hand them their check and it's like $800?
Yeah,
Is that weird to you?
It can be. I mean, it can be, but I mean, again, some of those events like that, like when people really go big, it's usually like some kind of like, I have to take out a client, and he gives me $1 million worth of business a year, so I'm going to treat him to this experience at Milk Room, which is which is great because they're able to drink some really cool stuff that you wouldn't be able to drink anywhere else. The other thing too is like, this is not really that original of a concept. I mean, there's the office at the Aviary. There's a bar right down the street from us here called Billy Sunday, which has an amazing...
Great spot. I've been there with you before.
Great, yes. Back bar is amazing. But those places are a little bit bigger. And that's what I feel is really unique to Milk Room, is that you get that one-on-one experience with a bartender for 2 hours. And for the price of admission, I mean, you can spend as little as $50 in there. Most people spend around about $100 in there for a 2-hour experience. But you get that really cool interaction with a bartender who knows a lot about the spirits and knows a lot about why are these drinks so expensive. That's the thing you have to do. It can't just be an old, here's an old 1970s Dewar's bottle. It's got to be like, what's the story behind it? Was it a different blend at that time, and this, that, and the other? Okay,
so you're tracking down these old bottles, and I'm gonna ask you about how you find them. You don't have to give up your sources, But I will tell you, it's like, have you bought any duds? Have you ever bought like a bottle of like old gin and you open it up and just it smells like acetone? Yeah,
definitely. Actually, one of the first bottles I ever got, I'll never forget. I bought it overseas from England, and it arrived, and it was a 1940-something bottling of Belmont bourbon, bottled in bond, 18-year-old bourbon. So it was distilled during Prohibition. I'm like, this is an amazing story.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was $1,000, and I was like, this is the biggest purchase I've ever had for a bottle. And so it arrives, and everything's good, and I'm unpacking some stuff, and I pick it up, and I'm like, man, this is a really dark bourbon, which is usually one of the signs that you've got some major oxidation going on.
Yeah.
But the fill level was pretty good still. And so I take the foil cap off, and the cork is sideways, and I'm like, oh no. And so I'm removing the foil, and then the cork just shot out of the bottle, and I was like, oh my God. So we tasted it, and of course it's like completely oxidized and like just shot. It wasn't super acetone, but yeah, it was bad, but we ended up keeping it to show people what it's like to have a bad bottle.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I got one other one that was a Jim Beam, really cool decanter from the 60s. Or no, actually it was 49, distilled in 49 and bottled in 58. And it was a bottled in bond. So usually the higher proof stuff is
pretty safe, right?
Yeah, right. But it's this glass decanter that looks like a shaker. And it's got a stainless top and then a little top on top. And that was bad. It was totally...
At least it looks cool. You can use that
as decoration.
It looks great. Yeah. And so how do you avoid when you're out buying? Are there any signs you can tell when something's oxidized?
Yeah.
I understand what happens if the liquid's really low.
Yeah, if the fill level in the bottle's a little lower. I mean, sometimes that doesn't really make that much of a difference, but usually the color, if it's cloudy, you can have some issues as well. So making sure that it's a clean or a not opaque. Fill level is good too. That's the other thing too, is like, a lot of people now that they know that I buy stuff for
now
Milk
people
Room,
find you.
Now they're looking, now they're approaching me with, hey, I found this in my grandfather's basement or whatever. And usually it's a bunch of old, like, shitty liqueurs, like from LaRue or De Kuyper or something like that. That's like 1950s. And I'm like, I don't need the 1950 creme de menthe. But every once in a while, you'll get some people who
have some good stuff.
Yeah, I had a guy reach out to me from Milwaukee, and he was like, yeah, my buddy was doing his house renovation, and underneath the stairs, he found this case. It's gorgeous. I have it at my house right now. It's gorgeous. It's a 6-pack box case of very old Fitzgerald. Oh, so it's 8-year-old, and it's from 1958 to 66, which is right in that like prime era when like Julian was there, and so, and they're in gift boxes with like the wrapping on it still. I mean, it's mint, and it had been in this guy's house.
And it's like perfect. That's a perfect environment for away from sunlight,
right,
away from temperature fluctuations.
Totally.
Like it's ideal. The guy had a wine cellar, didn't even realize it.
He did. No, I don't know how long he's lived in the house, but once he started the renovations, he saw this box and really didn't know what it was worth. But I mean, those bottles are, especially an unmolested case like that, like it makes the value even up higher because it's like a barn find or something like that for a car.
Yeah. So you said just gave an example of the way you get a hold of this stuff,
Right.
and it's a lot of it's by people reaching out to you.
Right.
But aside from that, how do you actually find this product? Do you go online? Do you go to auctions? Do you drive around?
I do some auctions, and then one of my buddies, Alex, who curated the back bar at Billy Sunday, and without him, like none of this would be possible, really. Really, he has connections in Europe, typically for Amaro, and that's his
cool.
that's his big thing, and that's Billy Sunday's big thing is getting these old Fernets and these old Camparis and all these other really obscure liqueurs and Amari, and but they also have stocks of like old Wild Turkey and things like that too.
You're just like, oh, this old stuff you want this too? You're like, yes.
And I think these guys were like, I don't know why you would, to Alex, would like, why would you want this stuff? Like, why do you want, I mean, why is it valuable to you? And so, I mean, he's built a business on it, and it's called Soul Agent, and he has a mailer that
I'm on their mailing list.
Yeah. So he sells not to individuals, he sells to folks that have liquor licenses and stuff, and he's the main source that procures a lot of stuff, especially if I'm thinking about a menu. I'm like, cool, how many bottles of this stuff can you get? Now I'm smart enough to get ahead of it where I'm like, okay, I'm planning on my next menu. Do you have 7 bottles of 1950s Fernet Branca? Or, or do you have this,
So okay, you that was one source you were willing to share, guys. That was very generous of him. I think, so if somebody wanted to get on that mailing list, they would go to soulagent.com.
Yeah, I believe so. Or
just Google it. Yeah.
Info at soulagent.com.
Yeah, that's Soul SOLE.
Yeah.
Though Soul Agent SOUL would be equally cool, right?
That would be very cool. It might be a spinoff.
Sounds like a cool movie from like the 1970s.
I would watch that.
Yeah, right. So you were talking about now you're allocating these spirits to put on cocktail menu.
Right.
How do you R&D with spirits that are this old?
So that's one thing that we do every week at Milk Room. We carve out an hour and a half every Wednesday, where we open up some of these bottles. If we had new stuff come in, we taste them. If a lot of times we're just workshopping new drinks and like off-menu drinks. So a lot of times, even though we put a menu together and it's really well balanced and everything, you still have people that are like, okay, cool, what's next? Like, give me more. And so we have probably about 300 other recipes that we have in our database. And that's the thing, like these bottles change and not every bottle is the same. So you really have to taste and make sure that the Chinar that you had is not muddy and still has all the flavors still coming through, because that's the thing, like you're buying these things like sight unseen.
And is it buyer beware in these situations where you buy a bad bottle, the person who sold to you is probably not going to give you a refund if it's not good.
Yeah, I mean Alex is good. Alex is
especially when you're a good customer. You're like, they know you're not trying to take advantage.
But that bottle of Belmont that I bought, from a retail store, which we
should go have a little of that later tonight.
Right?
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. So, I never followed up to be like, hey, this is I always think that it is buyer beware. I'm sure if I push for it, maybe.
Plus, I'm saying when you're a customer of buying as much as you do, they trust your word for it. But if it's like your first time and you buy it, you're like,
it was my first time.
This bourbon was no good. I'm sending it back an empty bottle.
And they're like, nah, that's okay. Yeah, right.
Okay, that's crazy. So you're telling me, okay, when you're doing a menu, you got to do it in advance. You have to go into it with the mindset of like, okay, if I'm using, an old bottle of Averna, you have to be like, hey, I'm gonna put this on my menu. I'm gonna need like 9 or 10 bottles of these.
Right, and let me taste them. Like when they come in, let's taste them and make sure that they're all the same, so we don't have to adjust. That's the thing about especially like old Amari and things like that. Like a lot of times the sugar falls out, so you have to.
I have noticed that.
Yeah, they're a lot drier, so you have to adjust. Like your Toronto can't be the same build as your Toronto with a.
It's funny you mention that, because at Polite we have a few old bottles, just like stuff we've come up on over the years, and we have a bottle of Fernet from I believe like 1972.
Yeah.
and it's not sweet at all.
Right.
And I've always wondered, was it the recipe drier back then?
That's kind of the mystery, right?
Or does the sugar just like kind of dissipate?
I think a little bit of both. I mean,
little bit of both,
definitely,
right?
especially with like Campari and things like that. Like, and that's the other thing. Like, they were making Campari like in all parts of the world, you know. And so like I've had bottles that were from like Switzerland and really cool other locations around the world. So yeah, and again, like our formula here in the States,
Yeah, right.
is a little different. I think Camper even.
Camper English did write a piece on how the Fernet recipe is different in different parts of the world.
Right.
In Argentina, he said it's drier, so that's why they drink it with Coke.
Yeah.
But if you tried it with American Fernet and Coke, it'd be like just cloyingly sweet.
Right.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy, and especially when you're talking about now you're talking about geographical production differences combined with just changes over time.
Right, like changes in the bottle, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing too. And, you know, dealing with vintage spirits too, you don't want to sound like, you don't want to be the guy that's like, everything was better 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's just different.
That is interesting for me to hear. Now I'm gonna pivot a little bit and ask you about what were some of the favorites? What are like say the top 3 like vintage spirits you've had that you've been like, wow, that were kind of you tasted and you're like, this is why I'm into vintage spirits.
Yeah, I think 3 bottles come to mind. The 58 Campari was definitely the first one. And it's, I mean, not only that, it's a beautiful bottle. You have a tag on it. It's like a tax tag. That's a piece of metal that's on top of the foil. That's just really cool. And you kind of hate ripping that apart when you're opening the bottle. Also the...
Sometimes you have to destroy something in order to appreciate it.
That's true. It's true. And then you have, and then the date is not the date it was produced, but the date it was bottled is on the label in like a perforated stamp. So it'll say like
cool.
it'll say like 958, and that means September of 1958. So they did it for a period of time in the 50s and 60s where they did that. Anyway, the 58 Campari is what was my aha moment, because I remember when John Troya came out with Grand Classico. That was that like 2009, 2010 or whatever, and that was like the big thing that everyone was using. Oh yeah, let's make your.
That's a damn good stuff.
It's
I like Grand
so
Classico.
good, but everyone was saying like this is the original recipe for Campari or a replica of that, and I never really understood it. I mean, I understood they were bitter. They were both bitter, but you got more of a floral, a little bit more viscosity with the Grand Classico, and then I opened up that 58, and I was like, oh shit, this is what he was talking about. This is really what it tasted like back then.
Oh, and did you have how'd you drink it? In what format? Did you have a
just neat.
Just neat?
Yeah, and I was like, this is more reminiscent of Grand Classico than it is modern Campari.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking you might have had it in like in a Negroni. Did you make a cocktail or anything?
Yeah,
like that?
we made an old pal with it, which was amazing, with rye whiskey and a little dry vermouth and that Campari, and it was so good. Yeah, and then 2 other bottles, 1950s era Drambuie, which is nuts. Like it was made with 15-year-old Talisker Scotch at the base, so it was like smoky. It was also so thick. It was like almost like pouring honey. Like it was very like it had a little bit of heather to it. Had a nice smoke that Drambuie doesn't have any longer. Again, here I am on this. How everything was better.
Yeah, no. Yeah, precisely that.
and then the 1909 Overholt, which I actually bought that bottle from Southern Teague. At a Mori Margo. Yeah,
I've had some of that bottle
Yeah,
before.
it's so good.
I've had some of that bottle.
It's ridiculously good.
Because I think he might have got that. Did he get that from Larry Rice at the Silver Dollar?
No, he bought it. He and his partner Max bought a lot. They had a Christie's auction about 3 years ago.
Oh, whoa.
And they bought one of those lots, and they bought 12 bottles of this stuff. It was amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned Southern Teague. Southern, we love you. If any of you guys out there know Southern Teague, he's the host of the Speakeasy podcast along with Amy Bolte, but he's also the head bartender at Mori Margo, one of my favorite places to drink. One of the really cool things about Southern that I will say, like, influenced me and that in a very profound way is his approach to drinking old spirits. I used to be one of those people who, I used to have 300 bottles of liquor and liqueurs and everything at my house. Now I kind of treat things very preciously, like, oh, this bottle, oh, I'm only gonna drink this on a special occasion, blah, blah.
Right.
And Souther was just very much like, he told me a few years back, he's like, you know what, man, you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
You could get hit by a bus today when you're leaving work, and you're gonna die with all this beautiful whiskey
right.
and all these
Never gonna
beautiful
enjoy it.
spirits on your shelf. He's like, you gotta drink it, man. He's like, I'll go out, I'll buy a really like old bottle, and I'll just go home that night and meet a couple buddies, we'll kill the whole bottle. And I was kind of like, you know what? In this period, me and my wife had been kind of moving, we'd moved cross country, so we knew how much a pain in the ass it is to lug spirits with you. And we're like, you know what? And ever since then, he's one of the people, him and Johnny Ragland of Comstock Saloon both kind of gave me the same advice. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like that philosophy. It's like, some things you just got to drink. Right. And if anything, that whole philosophy, Milk Room embodies that exact philosophy.
You're right.
We're like,
right.
We're going to buy this stuff. We could put it in a museum. We could put it in a shelf and no one's even going to touch it. Or we can make some delicious cocktails out of it. You guys can enjoy it exactly the way the distillers intended.
Right. Totally.
You know?
And that's the thing too, like when we're workshopping cocktails, like you really want to try to nail it within the first two shots. Right? You can't be like ruminate over it like for.
I don't know. What do you think?
No.
Maybe one extra dash of absinthe? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, but it's true. It's true. These are things that should be enjoyed and should be enjoyed now because, again, you don't know if you don't know what can happen, but also like you don't know about when you have a bottle that's got that much at the bottom, like it is gonna. I mean, there's a lot of air in there, so it's like you need to go ahead and drink it.
Yeah, that's what it's made for,
right?
Anyway, brother, with that said,
yes.
that's a good note for us to wrap up on. Guys, if you're in Chicago, come to either Lost Lake and see Paul McGee, or you can see him also at the Milk Room. Thanks again for joining us, man. Thank you
so much.
And
always a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, or leave a comment below. Also, in case you missed it, the Bartender at Large documentary is now available for purchase online, and it's name your own price, so you can pay whatever you want for it. To pick up a copy, go to bartenderatlarge.com and click on the banner up top. Thank you so much for watching.